was trying to.
This meeting is being recorded.
So there was an interview with this. It was on YouTube about a year ago. With this Japanese Zen master. So he was talking about, what this Soto Zen was. So he was saying things like, when the hand is like this, that's what it is. And when you change the hand like this, that is what it is. See, it sounds very familiar, right? It's the sort of thing that a lot of people here might say that this is what it is. So he did this for about an hour. It was a very long interview because he was just speaking in Japanese and it had to be translated as he was going along. So he spent the whole hour just talking like this about just what appears is what it is. If it changes to this, that's what it is. And right at the end of it, he said, "Okay, are there any questions?" And this very young American girl said, "Yes, I'd like to ask a question." She said, "Oh, thank you very much, Master, for your profound words, your words of wisdom." She said, "I've been waiting to ask you this question." And he said, "Okay, go ahead." She said, "Can you give me some advice about how to live my life? Can you give me some guidelines about, what I should do in life so that I'm on the right path to get towards enlightenment, you see?" And so she asked this and patiently waited for his answer. And the Soto Zen master paused for a second, and then he said to her, "Do what you want." And she said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Yeah, just live your life the way you want." And when she realized that was going to be his entire answer, when you saw the look on her face, which turned to a sort of combination of disappointment and horror. And then she finally kind of blurted out, I thought she was going to cry. She just said, "Is that it?"
Well, it's funny. It's
It
funny,
was
Tony.
worth what it would listen, Sander. It was worth watching the video just to see that bit at the end. Yeah, brilliant.
This reminds me of someone saying, follow your highest excitement."
Yes, or follow your dreams. Follow your dreams.
Well, thank you. We can talk more about this or not. Let's see. So let me first let me welcome.
But what was interesting? But what was interesting about that, son?
Whoa, Tony.
There's nobody else
now.
here.
Well,
there's nobody else.
Well, there is. Let me see. You will hear. Listen, maybe you have your screen wrong, but Patricia, welcome, Patricia, Gio, Garrett, Rosa, Hadar, Tony, Nina, Anand.
Oh, I've got a different view on my screen. Okay.
Well, that's just so practical. So welcome everybody to this open Zoom meeting. Lovely to see you, everybody. Adar, long time no see. Garrett, Nina, good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So, well, this is it. Here we are, sitting. So I would say that's just the directness of whatever is happening, sitting, working, petting your dogs, feeding your kids, dancing with your wife, writing a letter, just simply the directness of whatever seems to be happening. And there's no one separated as a you doing. There's no separated doer. Doing the writing, doing the sitting, doing the listening. It's all innocently, effortlessly, spontaneously this. And this is not saying that there's no doing or that it's all hopeless. That's just simply what is. And this may include the idea that, well, Sander, I really, really feel that I'm doing this. Well, that's it. The feeling that you are doing this or the belief that you are doing this is already not done by a separated you. The thought, I am doing this, and there's a me in time and space having a life, having a wife and a bunch of dogs is already not done by something separate. It's just innocently arising, I would say, like, well, basically like the falling of the rain and the blowing of the wind. There's nothing behind this or beneath this. There's no you able to find this. It's already just simply this. Like the monk is saying, you know, the hand one way or the other way, it's already just simply this. So where to go from here, I would say, well, this is not about going anywhere, although there may be a sense or an idea that, well, this may lead me to greener pastures and to a free life and more awareness. And that's it too. Thinking, you know, that this will lead you somewhere, you as a separated someone, into something else, something better, something more beautiful, something more profound, that it will become all magical, that suddenly flowers will grow everywhere. All these types of ideas and beliefs about the so-called you somewhere in the future is this too, innocent. And there's nothing wrong, I would say, with beliefs, thoughts, ideas, needs and wants. You know, and the needs may just simply multiply, stop, intensify, but they won't intensify or dissolve for a you as a separated observer and this. There's no separated doer nor separated observer. But there may be a sense, well, I'm seeing my thoughts. Well, that's it. The idea or the belief that there's a you seeing thoughts, that there's a you seeing a screen. It can be a sense of you, and that's it too. There's nothing wrong, nor nothing right, nothing special. At the same time, claiming or finding someone special is this too, innocently and effortlessly, I would say. So welcome everybody to the open Zoom meeting. Feel free to share whatever comes up. So anyone maybe wants to share something or wants to say something or whatever's coming up. Go ahead. Gio, I just pick you, Gio. What's up there?
Always the same, always the same. Always new. Always the same and always new.
And how you mean new?
I have no idea. Probably because there is no way to explain what this is. So I may call it new. Because the old one is already known by the mind, right? But the mind does not know what this is, so it is new. But not related to time.
Can it be that the explaining itself is already this, Gio?
It is.
That, you know, the ability, you know, the lack of ability to explain this or the trying to explain this, is this already?
Yes, yes. Are you hearing me properly, or because I have a
Gio,
problem?
this would be cool if you put up the volume a little bit. You are always very low.
It's on the maximum. I have some problems with this.
No, it's okay
It's
then.
better now.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
good already. It's here. It's
Yeah,
already.
that's cool.
Okay.
So what about suffering, Gio? Is there suffering?
Not today, no. But it may happen. Yeah, sometimes.
And what will you define as suffering?
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you mean by suffering. Now,
Well-
now you will make me think. I don't know, suffering.
So, I mean, maybe we can, you know, divide it in there's pain, physical pain,
Yeah.
and then there's suffering.
I think that
I'm not asking if there is pain. I'm asking if there's suffering.
yeah, well, pain, it's quite simple, isn't it? It's something physical, psychosomatic. So, you know, it's a matter of survival of the body. It must be afraid of putting the hands on fire because it will burn and you will remain without your hands. So the pain is something necessary. I don't see any problems. But there is another kind of suffering, which I suppose it is you expect things to be in one way, and when things does not fit with what you expected, you call that suffering or lack of satisfaction, something in this direction.
So is there something in that direction then?
I don't understand your question.
Because I asked you, is there suffering? And you said not now.
Yeah. And
then, but then maybe you were confusing pain with suffering because you didn't know if I was pointing to pain or suffering. So now I ask again, is there suffering apart from physical pain?
you may call suffering is some kind of a discomfort or perhaps some kind of a pain in the body, perhaps in the chest. I don't know. I'm just sort of guessing what is suffering physically. It's a kind of a contraction. I don't know. It's a sensation, is it not? Like any other sensation?
Well, I don't know.
Because emotions, feelings are sensations, right? And usually what people call suffering is a kind of quote unquote negative sensation or negative emotion. It's called suffering.
I would may I go in between?
Of
I
course.
would
Yes.
say
Of
that
course.
the definition in a way from pain to suffering is when the mind kicks in and is making a story out of the body pain or whatsoever or of whatsoever, and then there is the innocent need arising to change it, this to be different, like you said, Giovanni, in the beginning. There is this fight happening, like me and my life. There is this division, the separation, and this is in a way the suffering.
Yeah, I think that
When there
right.
is just the directness of what is, there is no suffering.
Yes.
So you need two in a way, no matter how it looks like. Yeah.
You need someone to be suffering, yes.
Yeah, one idea is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
Just an
What?
idea, a thought is enough to suffer. Yeah. You need someone whatsoever, something. Yeah. Okay, Gio. So there is no suffering.
No, I'm not suffering right now, no.
Beautiful. So Zander, you were never suffering, right? As you said in the last Zoom.
Well, there's pain, but there's no suffering, no. There's not a remembering either of suffering, but it doesn't matter so much. It's not better or of course, these are just more ideas about what suffering is, or that it's negative, it's just putting a certain label on a certain activity or happening. I'm not saying that suffering is bad or whatever. It's just what it is. It's as innocent as anything else. There's no one separated doing the suffering. It doesn't mean that it can stop. Either way, it's already just simply what it is. And trying to do anything about it, you know, by finding help or by trying to make an end of suffering, it's equally just simply this. There's no separated someone searching for help. There's just searching for help. You know, to end the pain or to end the suffering, it's the same. It's always just simply what it is. So this is not so much about the end of suffering.
Tony Guri, what would you say about suffering? You're muted.
But I want to say, let's make, you know, there's a clear distinction between physical pain and suffering. Suffering seems to have a me in the center, you know, it's about me and my life, you know, me, this is not going the way I want, yesterday was better, you know, this is not how I'm supposed to feel today.
You mean more like the mental thing?
Well, yeah, we can call it mental, but in a way, everything is mental, right?
Because you said physical.
I was about to say that it's not so different, pain and suffering, because pain is also, we don't want pain, we want to change, no? Physical pain or psychological pain, let's say suffering, we don't want. But suffering seems too much dramatic. Let's say discomfort. Maybe a little discomfort or big discomfort. No? We don't like this. Let's change. Let's push without. Well, it's not personal. It's what happens on its own. It's like you and Sander and Tony were speaking about this old wise master saying what you have to do is follow your, what do you want to do, no? It's like be yourself. You can't do otherwise. You only can.
It's hard to be yourself, right?
You don't have to have any thoughts to suffer. I mean, Sander, you were talking about saying, well, you know, things aren't going the way you want them to do, the way that you want them to go, or there's a resistance to what is happening. But you can feel suffering without having a single thought in your mind.
Oh,
there's
yes.
just this sense, the sense which comes from separation, that is just a dissatisfaction.
Do you have an example?
A discomfort. Tony used that word, discomfort. Very good. No, but there's no example of it because it's just a feeling of lack, a feeling of somehow not being complete,
yes.
A feeling of incompleteness. It's just a general, you know, this word melancholy. You know the word melancholy? Yeah, Sander, you know this word? It's
yes.
a kind of a sadness. It's not like a clinical depression, but it's just a sadness. Yes. A sort of a dissatisfaction of just being, of just feeling that there's something missing, there's something, it's very abstract. It's just a moment to moment thing that the ego feels about just not being satisfied. And of course, there's always the seeking for satisfaction with objects, with things that you acquire, whether it's, you know, buying a new car is going to make me feel happy or whatever. And of course, that has an effect, a temporary effect for a while. And then that's not enough. There's got to be something else. So there's this classical cycle, isn't there, of desire and satisfaction and then desire again, this sort of circle, yeah. but it's just it's a discomfort and an uncomfortableness with just being who you are, because you identify as a person, because there's this separation. Without the separation, the suffering disappears.
I have the impression that the consciousness is in a way the knowing of what is. This is the suffering. Without knowing, when there is just a pain, exactly like with the separation, there is no problem. But when the self-awareness kicks in, the knowing of what is, that's in a way the fight.
Yeah, there's a knowing of it. Certainly, there's a feeling, a perception that's really.
Yeah, me and my life. I know how to make it better. I have to make it better. This is not good enough.
But I'm talking about subtle. I'm talking about even before you articulate it and say, oh yeah, I'm suffering because of this, because this is going wrong in my life, or
it doesn't
even
need
before.
Thought.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't need a thought. It's a feeling of being incomplete.
Yeah.
And that feeling of incompleteness comes from making the intellectual mistake of taking your limited individuality to be what you are. The classic separation.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Rosa, I saw your video last week. I was watching it with a coffee. It was so sweet. I was watching it. You said, "Hello, Tony. If you're watching, hi." Oh, it was so sweet. Anyway, just wanted to say
that. Sweetheart, thanks.
So yeah, I mean the labeling and you know the getting into the nitty-gritty of suffering itself is already this, you know, explaining what suffering is and how it's supposed to feel and how it's supposed to work, and all ideas about it in a way it's already this, as is, you know, as is the wanting this to change, you know, or the wanting to find out what it is, getting to the bottom of suffering, labeling a certain sensation the suffering sensation, claiming it to be in a certain way and not in another way. It's just playing innocently, I would say.
Yes. And it's so obvious that this melancholy or this longing, this yearning is complete, nothing is missing. With the same longing, nothing is missing. It's not separated. Them suffering is not suffering at the same time, because separation is not. Even thinking, oh, let's play the separation, but it's not separated. Let's play suffering, but it's full on. Nothing is missing in the suffering.
Well, Tony, of course, if there is no suffering, of course, that doesn't mean that in your life there might not be something undesirable happening.
Discomfort,
I mean,
of course.
Yeah, there could be something.
Loss, yes, of course.
Yeah, but the question is, how does that affect you? You could just say, if there's peace, then how can the peace be affected by an undesirable action? It's about leaving impressions, I think. It's about leaving impressions, because if you're not suffering, if there is no suffering there, then you can still get, you know, irritated by something. You can still get, but what I found, of course, is that it bounces off. You know, it's like that story I told elsewhere, Sander, about when my wife's sister had a seizure, and then you know, I thought she died in my arms, and when everybody else was around me was just going completely nuts, I just felt completely peaceful about what was going on. It wasn't leaving an impression, although I thought she died, which she hadn't. But when it gets tested in a very traumatic situation like that, that's quite revealing.
Yeah, and here is again this, Giovanni.
We must not forget that we are talking about suffering as one side of something. The other side of suffering is happiness. It's the same mechanism. You cannot, we don't ask what is happiness, what is joy, but it's the same
Oh,
thing.
but we can ask what is happiness. I mean, it doesn't matter. We can ask what happiness is. It doesn't matter. Yeah, of course. Yeah. You know,
Giovanni, I wouldn't say it's an opposite. I wouldn't say happiness is an opposite.
Yeah.
No. It's not an opposite of what? There's not, you know,
because for me, happiness seems to be an innate thing which doesn't have an opposite.
Yeah, then that's something else. But there is that happiness that can only happen when there is a separate me to be happy. If
well, okay,
no
I would make a difference then between happiness and pleasure, which is pleasure is like temporary.
Yeah.
Pleasure just comes and goes in the same way that suffering does.
Yeah, we can use that word.
Yeah, but I would say happiness or peace is unconditional. You know, it's not dependent on events.
We have to agree what words mean, because
here, of course, always.
For example, happiness is not the what is not changing. Happiness appears and disappears here.
Of course,
but it is the meaning of the word. What is not, what doesn't change is not happiness. It's something else. It's a word.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
What means happiness for one,
but not happiness.
So, you know, in this place freely, like I said, you know, what is seen to be happiness is different from so-called person to person, you know, all types of ideas about happiness and what it is and what it is not. You know, in that way, you never come really together.
In that way, everything is already a misunderstanding.
Yes. And I mean, you know, I think there's a melting of the opposites, you know, where there's no opposites. You know, whatever is happening, this is not opposite to something else. To what?
Well,
one difference between happiness and unhappiness, if you like, or happiness and sadness, is that you will complain about suffering, but you will never complain about happiness.
Yeah, that's true. Affectivity. When there is affectivity, it can be positive, quote unquote, and can be negative, quote unquote. But it's the same mechanism. When it's affective.
It's all the same. There is just a mechanism, I would say. There's nothing separate. There's just the functioning.
Yeah. I understand what you mean.
There's no one separated making it function in a certain way. I mean, all the ideas and beliefs about happiness are just innocent in that sense also. As is seeing them in a certain way or not seeing them in a certain way or discussing about it. It's already innocently this. You cannot you cannot come anywhere with it. It will not bring you anything.
In a way, this body-mind complex is built in a way to survive, to reproduce, naturally so. So there is a natural preference for growing, for comforting, I would say, like, and this plays freely. There is
it's
a
like
functioning.
Hand on the stove, right? With the hand on the stove, it's natural to not want to burn your hand and to walk. It doesn't need you. You know, it's just
exactly
not jumping a car. It's just so natural. You know.
And for example, when this body-mind complex is not functioning like it has to be, for example, there is an issue maybe not being able to see, then automatically the other senses are going to be more stronger in order to compensate. But yeah, it's very naturally playing out. And then the labeling of I prefer comfort and not discomfort is so natural. like wanting to be
Not
happy
that
and
I-
not. It's yeah, it just
Well, it's all in a way that how it seems that it functions, yes. There's nothing more to say. There's
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that
That's
kind of
quite
conversation
ongoing,
isn't
I would
going
say.
on when you're suffering, is it?
Tony?
That that kind of conversation isn't going on while you're
I
suffering.
cannot tell you because there's no suffering, but probably when
Yeah.
there's suffering, there's no, you know, these types of conversations are not going on.
You're trying to react to it or avoid it. If there's suffering, you're trying to avoid it. You naturally there's a reaction to avoid or replace it with something else, which is better.
Or also understand it in order to make it better, to help yourself. Whatsoever.
Yeah, Rosa, there's a whole area of therapy and psychological counseling, cognitive, behavioral therapy, all of this stuff which tries to do that. It like cognitive therapy, it takes the bad stuff, you know, the negative stuff, and it tries to replace it with something positive. But all it's doing though is it's replacing one kind of conditioning with a different kind of conditioning. So
Yeah.
it has its good points, I guess, but it's not really addressing the fundamental problem of making the mistake of taking yourself to be separate. It's not addressing, therapy doesn't do that. Although these days some therapists try to incorporate non-duality into their therapy, which I think is a bit crazy, but no.
Since Tony, since I can only see the perfection in what is, I don't see nothing like saying there is a me or a no me. There is a identification with this body or not, it's the same. There is no difference. Feeling attracted to a therapist or to a non-dual speaker, it's the same. It makes no difference.
Yes, but you can make a distinction.
Yeah, of course, it's automatically
you're
happening.
saying it's not the same, but you can make a distinction between a tree and a car and a house, and you can make those distinctions, right?
Well, we can say it's all water, right? I mean, or it's all life, you know, in a way. It's exactly.
Yeah, so the ocean and the
still
wave
just is,
analogy is
Yeah.
very nice. You can make a distinction between the formless ocean and the waves and the different waves that rise and merge back into the ocean, but it's all water, of course. Yeah.
Yes, it's all.
Yeah.
So I would say it's all this. You can say it's
That
all.
sounds like a Zen. That sounds like the sort of thing a Zen master would say. But anyway, go on.
But the wave is never actually separated. You know, it's still water. It's still this. So even the sense
Yes.
of separation is never separated in that sense. It's never separated. Even the feeling of separation is not separated from this. It's still just this, like the drop or the wave is still just the water. It's always simply this.
Yes, but you still make that distinction, because even if the Buddha was standing on the edge of a cliff, he wouldn't take one step forward, because he's already made a distinction between what that would mean if he took one step off the cliff.
Oh, but there's nothing wrong with distinctions. I'm not saying that there's anything, you know, distinctions, you know, that's just how it seems to function, you know, making distinctions, you know, dividing. So dividing is already just simply innocently happening. It's, you know, like making distinctions and judgments. You know, there's nothing wrong with judging or you know, choosing or whatever. It's just innocently functioning that way. Here it's not about something else. You know, here it's not about less judgment or, you know, it's so natural to judge if the ice is thick enough to go on it. although there seems to be spiritual teachers saying that you have to get rid of judgment, you know, and only then you are free. It's bullocks.
That's
Judgment.
bullshit. That's complete bullshit.
Oh, it's complete judgment.
Because where it comes from is that people who get onto the spiritual path, they have this image of what it's like to be spiritual.
Oh yes.
So they say things like, "Oh, you shouldn't be judgmental," you know, and that's just bullshit.
Well, the
But-
funny,
Okay,
the funny-
but wait, bullshit for whom? Bullshit for you? For the other who resonates with this, it's not bullshit. So it's
No.
perfection.
Of course, it's
That's true, Rosa. That's true. It's exactly the same as the conversation we're having right now
now,
about
yes.
talking about a functioning that's happening. At the time, you know, when a thought just spontaneously appears, or whether you spontaneously just do some action, there's no room in there for another thought which says, "Oh, you know, I'm not doing anything. I'm not the doer." No, when a thought appears or an action happens, you're completely consumed by it. Your attention is on that thought or on the action. You're not saying to yourself at the same time, "Yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm not really the doer." Or you might reflect on that afterwards, but you're not doing it at the time because you're just consumed by that one thought or action.
Well, it's always like that, Tony, right? When there's activity, you know, we talked about this before. When there is petting the dog, there's no additional loop going, I'm petting the dog, I'm petting the dog. There's just simply the directness of what is happening. And then, you know, when someone is asking you, what have you done? You might say, I pet the dog. So this adding of the me to the so-called activity itself is already innocently, you know, it's just languaging. There's no one behind it adding the me to what was already not to. And even the adding, you know, the using of language is as innocent as the petting of the dog and the liking of the dog or the not liking of dogs. It all
You
plays.
see, when Rosa says, "Oh, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other, it's all the same," that doesn't sit very well with me, that kind of comment, actually.
Because it gives the idea that there is never, you know, a choosing for one or the other, you mean? But I don't
because
think
it's like it's imposing an idea or a concept on your actions.
Yeah.
As an afterthought.
But I'm pretty sure that there
Rosa,
are.
if your house is suddenly burning down, you're not going to say, "Well, this is just the same as not burning down." You're going to be running out of the house.
Yeah, but it's what it is, Tony. It's simply
Yeah,
what it
and
is.
well, yeah,
It's a burning
running
house
down
and a
is
not
part
burning
of the
house.
game.
So there is simply
yeah, that's true, Rosa. Everything is as it is, but that in itself is not very exciting for me.
What? How do you mean, Tony?
Well, you're giving emphasis to the statement. You're making that statement important for yourself when you say everything is just this, everything as it is. You're making that somehow a meaningful, important statement.
No, it's exactly without any meaning.
It isn't. For me,
yeah,
it
Tony.
isn't.
When I say this, this blah blah, there is no meaning in it. It's what it is. You can.
But you choose to say it. But you choose to say it, right?
You guys, it can be heard, Tony. I understand. You know, it can be heard.
Yeah, totally. I get you too.
So you can hear it as in a certain, you know, the hearing of a certain statement. You know, it's the same with saying, you know, there's no separated doer. So this can be heard that, okay, I don't have to do anything, you know. That's not what's being suggested here. It's not, this is not a nihilistic approach that everyone should just, you know, lie on the couch and do nothing and let the house burn with you in it. No, because that's not the case. When the house is burning, they're simply innocently in action, you know, going out. And by the way, no one is knowing what is going to be happening when your house is burning. Anything can happen, from fear, from trying to save the cat, from screaming, from jumping out, from trying to, you know, it's unknowable in a sense because it's just what's going to be happening. But there's no separate someone in the body making the choice. There's just choices being made innocently and there's action being taken, but there's no one doing
I'm not there's nothing wrong with that statement that Rosa made. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's actually
There is
it's,
also
in fact,
nothing
it's
right
true.
with the statement.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
That's interesting. No, I would say your statement is true. I wouldn't say
I wouldn't say
it's
so.
untrue.
Okay, here
well,
we go with truth. For me,
yes,
there
I
is
would
no
say it's
truth.
true. For me, there is. You see, for me, there is
Yeah,
meaning.
I know, Tony.
You see, yeah. If I drive down a road and it says no right turn, one-way street, that sign has a meaning for me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, this is a beautiful, because, you know, this is not about, you know, no meaning. I mean, there's full-on meaning. You know, that's for everyone. You know, there's full-on meaning. It's just, but it's not for someone in particular.
Right.
You know, there's just full-on meaning, but there's no, it's not meaning for someone as you outside of this. But yes, there's full-on meaning, of course. Of course, there's
It
meaning.
makes no difference to me.
There
Yeah,
are
go on.
choices, there are actions, there are thoughts, there are feelings, but it's not for someone. It's for no one. There
Well,
is
it
no
makes
one
no
there.
difference to me, Giovanni. It makes no
Oh.
difference to me. If I say this is happening to me or this is happening, it makes no difference to me.
Makes no difference, of course.
Then you are saying the same thing that Rosa was saying, right?
Am I?
Yes.
Well, no. She was
It's
saying
right.
there is only this, what is happening, and I agree with
Whatever.
that. And I think that's a true statement. You see, I wouldn't say, oh, it's meaningless. I would say, no, that what she's saying is true. That has a meaning for me.
We have a hand. Sorry, guys. Hadar raised her hand quietly, so she's going to. Hadar, go ahead. Keep
I
the
was
phone, Tony.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is this. I think it's all question of perceptions. Each one has different perception. We're trying to find words for describing things from different perceptions. So it's kind of hard. It's like different languages, you know. So it's kind of hard to get to point to something that each one wants to point to, something very vast from a certain point of view. So even for, you know, if there is a fire, there is immediate action, the body will run, there is all the, you know, chemicals working in the body, you know, all the hormones, there is instant reaction. In the same system, it's going to be also the thought system that can say, why I did that, or there's going to be like, I should have done it differently. And then there's going to be suffering also after that. Can be suffering just for the sense of blaming, you know. If there is someone that owned the whole thing, if there is a belief that it's been owned by it was my responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
So but it's all coming together, the action without the thought, and then the thought after. It's kind of a learning process, because if we didn't have thoughts, there is this is the thing that enables, you know, that we are able to learn and to function and to do actions. So I think it's a part of the whole system.
There's nothing wrong with thoughts, Hadar. I mean, if that is what you want to say, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's quite practical, as far as it seems. Thoughts, you know, this is not about getting less thoughts, or, you know, who would be able to get less thoughts? You know, it's quite impossible.
In the thoughts, there is also the narrator of the one that speaks in the thought. You know, there is the thought that speaks in the mind, like said, I was supposed maybe to do that, the analyzing what's the situation. So it's not only one thought, it's a discussion, it's the memories after that comes up, and you know, it's presenting as someone that learned or had experience, and then he expressed himself, you know, but it's all going in the mind. It's not only one thought.
It's not only one thought.
It's like the whole system of a narrator that speaks and can blame itself.
Well,
And
it's just a self-referential loop, we can say.
yes,
But most of what we do doesn't involve thinking, does it? It's automatic. Like if you're driving a car,
Oh yes.
you're not thinking to yourself, I must press down on the brake a bit harder now to slow down. I must turn. You're not having that conversation with yourself.
No,
Most
no.
of what we do is just automatic. It's like an autopilot, isn't it?
yeah.
It's just happening, yes. And something seems more obvious that there's no one doing it, that it's automatic. But the whole, that itself is already automatic, I would say.
And
Or
even discussions are automatic.
Yes, of course.
Mind is automatic.
In the sense that empty of something else, empty of a separated you as a doer.
Yeah.
So we can call it automatic or whatever. And some actions seem really, depleted of a you doing, when it comes to repetitive motions or driving cars and,
Because it feels familiar, it's been there for such a long time. The character is like known to itself. So it feels familiar. The voice feels familiar. This voice since always. So you have this identification with the actions, tendencies of the body, the voice in the head. So it's been like it become like an identity, which is discovered that actually it's just an identity. It's empty from something really real.
Well, yes, there can be identifying with the physical structure or the mental structure that itself, may seem to happen or not. There can be a sense of, or a belief that I'm the body or I'm the thoughts.
The thoughts, you mean?
What about when you're having
the voice in the head? What is the thoughts?
Well, some say it's a voice. Some say, it's voices. When you talk to schizophrenic people, they have 6 voices, or 10 voices, and
there is projection.
Every voice seems to be a different character, from one point to another. I mean, so some say voices, some say thoughts. Let's say mental process or a thought stream. It doesn't matter so much. It's more thoughts about thoughts. What is a thought? Yeah, it's an idea, which is also a thought. You cannot think yourself out of thinking, because there's already no you in the thinking. There's no you in the thinking, no you behind the thinking. It's hard to step out of a thought, or out of a thought stream, or out of a voice in the absence of a you already in it.
Yep.
It's not possible. So
when you have thoughts you don't want,
there is no
that's called suffering. Thoughts that you don't want are called suffering.
Yeah.
There is no thoughts that you don't want, because that you say you is a thought. So a thought that you say you don't want is a thought that said I don't want something.
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
Have you ever said to yourself, look, my mind is full of thoughts, I can't get to sleep?
Is that is the thought. There's no you special. You said my mind is that or that. Now we're talking is a thought.
Talking is just a verbalization of thoughts. It's nothing else. Talking inside or outside. I mean, there's no inside, outside, but in a way, speaking is just externalizing of thoughts.
Yeah.
When you don't hear it, it's thoughts, and when you hear it, it's speaking. But it basically, it's the same thing.
People say to themselves all the time, my thoughts are tormenting me. Yeah. Or I wish I didn't have these thoughts. People say that all the time.
Yeah, but Tony, here we go again. So the adding of the me, my thoughts, when there's thinking, so here there's just thinking or whatever, walking, there's no sense of, there's no feeling of my thoughts, nor is there a feeling of doing them. you know, or
Well, it's exactly right. Exactly right. It's identifying with your thoughts as being my thoughts that causes suffering. It's the
yes.
me and mine. It's the me and mine that is the separation.
Which is a thought. The me that says that this is my thoughts is a thought. So it's
No,
the same.
that's not a thought. No. It could be a thought, but what I'm talking about is not a thought. Is
How
not
do you
a
know?
thought. For instance, you're sitting down and you look out the window,
Yeah.
and then you just notice something. You just notice a tree. I wouldn't call that a thought. I would just call that a noticing or acknowledgement. I wouldn't call that a thought.
But now
It's
you
just
say
a
I wouldn't.
perception.
I was noticing, the one that say I was noticing the tree is a thought.
Oh, okay. What I would say then is seeing the tree. Yeah, okay, that's fine. What I would say is that seeing the thought is a perception, and therefore I would call it mental activity. So, for instance, when people talk about thoughts, they might talk about feelings and emotions and that sort of thing. I would call all of it just mental
of course.
activity.
We talked about this. Many people seem to say I feel something instead of saying I think something. People tends to feel all types of things which are in a way unfeelable, but it's just expressed in I feel instead of I think that I'm going to have a problem. You don't feel. There's no feeling that you're going to have something. You know, there can be a thought. It's the same with there's no actual feeling of separation. There's no feeling of not separation either. There's maybe a thought going on that I'm in a certain position, but even that doesn't happen. But it can happen that I have a life, I'm here on this earth, you know, I have a position between other so-called people, and they are separate from me. And this is my life. I own it. And this is just a self-referential story. There's no way to stop it. It's just playing freely. There's no way to avoid it. And there can be
sorry.
Except that's what the spiritual path promises you, doesn't it? The end of suffering.
There is that kind of
and
thought.
it can be an end of suffering, of course. I'm not saying that there can't be an end to suffering. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, sure, I understand.
Suffering may stop, you know? Yes. Sorry, go ahead, Giovanni.
I think most of the thoughts presupposes that there is a thinker, which is the me. It is very rare, at least for me, to be completely impartial with thoughts. When there are thoughts happening, it goes automatically with the thought, with the thinking that there is a me thinking them. I mean, it would be very strange to see just thoughts happening by themselves.
But there is no separated thinker. So the thinking...
There is no. There is no separated thinker. But every time a thought appears, it presupposes that there is a me thinking that thought. And that's the problem, isn't it?
But that's not happening at the time, Giovanni. When you're breaking eggs to make an omelette, you're not thinking that, are you?
No.
That's just breaking omelets. You know, the ownership of thoughts and the doership of thoughts is mostly added after the so-called action.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And thought will represent itself as you. It will say it's kind of representing what.
That's with language, you know, language is in a way dualistic, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, it's practical. Thoughts in that
No, it's not a matter of language. Sorry, it's not a matter of language at all.
No,
when a thought sorry?
It's not a matter of language, it's not a matter of anything, you know, separate. in the sense that it's not a matter of something else outside. So thoughts may be dualistic in nature, as are thoughts or speaking.
So it looks dualistic as well, because there is a seeing that there is thoughts rising, representing themselves as your voice, as you.
Well, it
But
may,
it's not dualistic because it's the part of the system. It's all that. It's all this. It's part of this mechanism.
Yeah,
well,
these are the two types of view that I have to. There are two kinds of thoughts. One thought may be a thought that is completely impersonal, without a source, without a me. And the other kind of thought is I am thinking those thoughts, which is an afterthought, but it's the most common. It's what happens with most of the people in the streets. They are thinking, and they think that there is someone thinking, which is themselves.
That's another idea. That
sure
is happening. Thinking that other people thinking is just another thought.
That's another subject.
Thinking that they are thinking about you, all those things they think about me. So there's an idea of knowing what other people might think, and that they think as you think they think. It's just, there's no escape.
You can see that there is so many people not asking these questions, not even just like just doing what they're doing. And
and I'm not saying it's wrong, but like Tony is saying, when there's action, there's no additional thinking. I'm doing the egg making now. I'm taking the knife. There's just preparing food, walking.
What causes suffering? Because that's where we started. Was the suffering? Is what I would call Giovanni called. What did he call it? I would call introspective thinking. That's when you're directing the thinking back to yourself, and you're making judgments about what you perceive to be, your life. It's not the functional thinking. It's not the functional thinking that says, "Oh, I've got to go to the supermarket and buy some food." That's like a functional thinking. But it's the introspective thinking, particularly the thinking which you can't get rid of and keeps coming back to haunt you. Like somebody does something bad to you and you think about it, and then you say, "Okay, I've forgotten about it." And then like 10 seconds later, it's replayed again like a movie. And then you think it again, and then no, you've done with it, and it keeps on coming back. That kind of introspective thinking is really what causes suffering, I would say. But the functional thinking is...
It looks like it's recorded. Like if you heard somebody when you were little, like you did something and somebody said to you, "That was not good," or "You've been bad boy," after it's been taped, and then you're doing it to yourself, you are something that you turn towards yourself, and then it's become like you're arguing with yourself, but there's no yourself. It's something external that you just been observed, inside. There's no inside, but it's been recorded.
Yes, thinking about Giovanni has said something about the difference with different kind of thoughts. We only have a word, thoughts, but they are very different. Some ones are absolutely impersonal, and there are not thoughts like flashes, let's say, and other kind of thoughts very linked and burdened with sensations and emotions, thinking about blame, shame, or proud, But there are another kind of thoughts that are not personal at all, absolutely flashes, And I want to say another thing. We're speaking about the beautiful duality all the time, Beautiful duality, Pushing pain and pulling pleasure, pushing bad thoughts and pulling good thoughts. This is coming back to the symbol of the wheel, the periphery always is changing up and down, left and right, worse and right, and improving and decreasing. But at the same time, anything changes, anything or nothing changes. Nothing changes. It's absolutely doesn't matter. Doesn't matter feeling suffering or happiness. It's all whole, complete, and this. And that's amazing. It's like this. It's like this. Yes, of course. Pulling, pain, pushing, of course.
Well, that's another fault.
You can do otherwise. But at the same time, nothing
Tony.
is it's this.